welcome back to another episode of Just
Just
a
a
Squirrel
squirrel
looking
looking
for
for a nut,
trying to
trying
to
to
get out of
get out of
this
this
rut.
rut.
Not bad.
Oh, please.
I am not comfortable with this.
I was good till just A.
Well, you made it further than me, Mr. Bodenheimer. Okay, I'm going to start this show with a story. You know I like to tell stories, so just roll up your sleeve and let's get into it. In the Greek myths, I like seeing that. In the Greek myths, humanity was actually created by two brothers, Prometheus and Epimetheus. Prometheus means foresight, he had vision. Epimetheus means hindsight, he couldn't think ahead. So Epimetheus made all the animals out of clay and gave them all the good gifts, wings and feathers and tortoise shells and fangs. Then he finally got to humans, and because he had never thought ahead, he realized when he started making people that there weren't any good gifts left to give. So we were just sort of left this species that was huddling in the cold at night and in the rain. We didn't have anywhere to go. We didn't have any fur to protect us, nothing. So Prometheus felt bad for humans. He snuck up to Olympus at night when the guardian of the hearth was asleep, and he stole fire, even though Zeus had told him never to do that. And he gave it to humanity. Humanity learned how to cook. Humanity learned how to light the sky. Humanity began to grow and build towers and even figure out how to start climbing mountains like Olympus. And Zeus was furious. He punished Prometheus. He took Prometheus to a mountain, and for all eternity, he assigned vultures to rip into Prometheus's abdomen and eat his liver. And then every day after the liver was eaten, it would grow back again, and they'd come back the next day and eat it yet again for all eternity. And it's still going on right now. That mountain is probably near the Empire State Building. No one sees it anymore because of the pandemic. But anyway, couple of questions. A, Prometheus, should he be comfortable with being uncomfortable? After a while, getting your liver eaten, maybe that's something you just need to experience as something new to get out of your comfort zone. B, should humanity have stayed uncomfortable in the cold and the dark and in the fire? Someone answer me. I'm uncomfortable with the silence.
I'm uncomfortable by the story.
All the better. And you're meeting the theme for tonight.
Scott, one thing that I love, just to start this off, is how you are able to make Greek mythology come to life so many years later. And the fact that you actually are passionate and have an interest in learning, that is something that I feel comfortable in knowing, because now I have someone that I can learn from when it comes to a lot of this. I think for me, there are a couple of things that come to mind. The first is, yes, do I feel some level of discomfort in knowing that someone else was eating human liver? Absolutely. Why do I feel that discomfort? Is because I don't see myself doing that. And I think the other part is I've found this to be an interesting, or rather fascinating thing, that over the years, I think many of us as humans have accepted this concept of not eating each other. But what's interesting is that we've accepted the concept of eating other animals, other living things over the years. I can't name you the last time I went into a restaurant and I had any challenge eating a chicken, eating steak, beef, whatever it was. But if there was a part of a human on a plate, no way. There's no way. And so I've really been interested in trying to understand, when did that turn happen? Or was it always like that? Was cannibalism always a thing that was meant to be avoided? But that is my first reaction to your story. Is I definitely feel uncomfortable being able to put myself in either of those shoes. Yes.
Well, That got the conversation off to a dramatic start. I'll just take a turn here for a second and tell you all a story about a friend of mine who's in her 80s who moved into a gated community in California, and it was full of all these stuffy old women. And my friend is not stuffy at all. So she was invited for tea and crumpets with the ladies who lunch every day. And they wanted to talk about gossip and all that. And my friend started to talk about cannibalism with them. They never invited her back to have tea and crumpets again. Do you think that their reaction was a healthy one? Adrian, Trip?
So I'm a vegan, so I don't eat animals. Just to get that out there.
I am now after the way this started.
Yeah, I've been a vegan for about 5 or 6 years. And it really, I must admit, it wasn't because I had this epiphany about eating animals or anything like that. I was a vegan by being led to be a vegan. One, I don't cook, and the person I live with cooks, and he became a vegan, so I became a vegan because But anyway, it suits me now. Would I see? What was your question about? Should she have been invited back because she wanted to talk about cannibalism and it made the people uncomfortable? Did it make them uncomfortable? It was. I think there's different words there. Sometimes it's not that you're uncomfortable. Sometimes, and I'm not saying this is true for your story. You're bored. You're not interested. You're uncomfortable because you're bored with the topic. It's not a disgust. It's not anything more. To me, being bored is about as uncomfortable as I ever want to be. I just abhor being bored or conversing with people who hold values that are so repugnant to me that I'm very uncomfortable because I just don't understand. I mean, really repugnant to me. Maybe they're cannibals. I don't know. But the story about the woman, people like to associate with people who fit in with their set of mores, and she obviously didn't. Simple answer for a much bigger question.
So, but but then that makes me sort of ask, and I'm picking on you, Adrian, because you had the gall to actually answer the question. Adrian,
I gave it a fair shot.
You did. We all felt uncomfortable. Adrian, do you think that it's crap? This cliche, we should be comfortable with feeling uncomfortable then? Because I'm not hearing you say you need to focus more on becoming more comfortable with boredom and hanging around people.
Hell no. No. Should we become comfortable with feeling uncomfortable? I think we have to think about what the discomfort is. So is the discomfort that you want to become comfortable with something that will provide further some part of your life? I'll give an example. Public speaking. People hate public speaking and they're awfully uncomfortable with doing it. I think that's short of death. That's maybe public speaking's on top of death. People are fearful of it. And yet, depending on your profession and where you would like to go within it, etc., public speaking may be part and parcel of what you have to do. And so you do have to get comfortable. You may not love it, you may not crave it, but you become comfortable in the act of doing it. Does that sound like it makes sense? As that example?
Caleb, talk.
I see where Adrian is going, and I'm going to, and Trip's going to probably jump in here because he knows also where I'm coming from. We say it a lot, all the time. Get comfortable with the uncomfortable, and I think it's whenever, just like Adrian was getting at, whenever the outcome has a purpose. For instance, understanding something that maybe you have a fear of because you just don't know, right? I bring up the word ignorance, not because I'm trying to tell anybody that I'm trying to put anybody down or whatever. I'm just really meaning the lack of knowledge. Because there is a lack of knowledge or a lack of understanding of something, people want to avoid that, which causes discomfort. take for instance my job. My job is to teach people how to be better leaders, how to become leaders, develop as leaders. In that, you have to be able to explore diversity, explore uniqueness, make everybody feel like they're included, like they have value. But how do you do that if you have a barrier of ignorance about maybe a person's culture, their way of life, their race, their religion, their sexual orientation? How do you really become a true leader of that individual if you let that barrier of fear of not knowing about that individual, that person, or willing to explore that? How do you step into becoming a true leader and really leading that individual without understanding that? So, in order to do so, you have to seek discomfort. Discomfort in seeking knowledge about that person, about that person's culture, exploring whatever it is that you think you may fear because you don't have knowledge of. I think that's a little bit about, I mean, I applied it directly to my career and what I do in developing others, but I feel like that's what Adrian was getting at whenever the mean, right?
Mhm.
Have purpose. When you are putting yourself in a position that is going to, as she said, improve your life or the life of others. If it has purpose, becoming a leader, knowing about somebody, finding out what it is that you fear. It's not comfortable. It may not be comfortable, but you can bridge that gap in understanding somebody.
So
I
go ahead, Bodhi.
I was gonna say I got a couple of things to unpack based off which. First of all, to what Adrian said, yes, I think Jerry Seinfeld said it. More people would rather be in the casket than read the eulogy. It's just how afraid we are of public speaking, and I see it all the time. Caleb can attest for it too. Both of our jobs, people have to get up and speak in front of us all the time, and it's a very common thing. I think to kind of feed off of what Adrian said about the, if you go into a conversation and you're just absolutely bored, that's an uncomfort level that I'm going to have until I'm 95 years old. That's just something I'm never going to get comfortable with. You always sit there wondering how you can get out of there. But for me, I think we often tend to resist the unknown. And if there is something like, even something like public speaking, we don't know how it's going to go. We build this narrative in our head that it's going to be catastrophic, and we tend to stray away from it. And it's just like with anything in life, you practice it, you can get decent enough at it, good enough at it, to where you can start to become proficient. There's not that uncomfort level anymore with it. But to go all the way back to the beginning of this, when Scott was talking, you're talking about we got the whole cannibalism conversation started with the eating of the liver, and you were saying, does he become comfortable with that? I kind of mirror that to what our country's been going through with the pandemic. It's been how many years now that we've been going? We're going on 2 years.
3, yeah.
And it's like, is it 3 now?
Yeah, I
3.
think 3-year anniversary.
Okay, 3 years too. I've
March.
lost count of it, but we're going on the anniversary of this pandemic, and it's crazy now because we're comfortable with, some of us, wearing masks. We're comfortable social distancing. We're comfortable with these things that we never would have imagined in our wildest dreams that we would be doing on a consistent basis. So that's the one that I kind of equate this whole get comfortable being uncomfortable is us as a society. People were like, this is going to pass over in 1 week and we'll be fine. And here we are now 3 years later, and we're still going through a lot of the same stuff.
Do any of you think that there are certain topics that will always have a level of discomfort? I'll give you some examples that I've observed from my personal experience. First is race. No matter how much I've talked about, no matter who I have the conversation with, maybe besides a handful of people, it always seems to be a topic of discomfort. and it always seems to be a topic that many people don't want to go deep into, to whether it's acknowledging their own shortcomings or whether it's just sharing perspectives and observations about it. And the other topic is what's happening right now globally. Now, once again, this is not a show about politics, and there's so much that I don't know what's happening with the whole situation, Russia, Ukraine, and some of the other countries involved. But what I've learned from this brief period of having these things happen is some of the people that I try to have conversations with, they straight up avoid it. They straight up avoid it, due to the possible fear of, I think all of us know of what a world war, due to the possible fear of that happening. And it really got me curious, like, are there certain topics that this level of discomfort will always be there?
Before we go into that, I do want to welcome Russ back to the show. It is good to see you. Thank you. Make sure you keep listening and share some comments. We want to hear your insights and your feedback, as well as that of anyone else who's listening or watching on some of the other channels. And we will incorporate that into the conversation. Oleg, I turn it back over to you.
That was a question to anyone. I was just curious, do you feel like there are certain topics that will always have a level of discomfort, such as the one about race, world war, religion?
I think race stands out to me the most. And I see that even now talking about diversity. I mean, people are uncomfortable talking about it. They don't want to offend somebody. They don't have shared experiences with someone else. And it's that little bit of uncertainty that I think that someone somewhere is always going to have a tough time talking about that. You don't want to say the wrong thing. You don't want to offend somebody. I think now, I think over time, everything that's going on with transgenders, I think that's an issue that I think as of right now, people are still having a tough time. We actually discussed that today, that people are having a tough time talking about. But I think it all goes back to the amount of knowledge you have on a said subject. I think a lot of times we're afraid to talk about something because we're not very knowledgeable on it. But I think the more knowledgeable you are, I think the more equipped you are to be able to handle those conversations.
So I'm going to narrow it down for a second, because I agree with you. Race, religion, sexuality. Here's the thing that I think a lot of people are very uncomfortable about talking about with all sorts of different people. Money.
Yeah.
Money.
Yeah, one's financial situation.
Yeah. Success and failure and your bank account.
It's really interesting because people will talk, myself included. There have been times when I would talk about it after the events happen. I would never talk in the moment. Hey, this is the current position. This is the screenshot of the bank statement.
I think along the line that people would rather be in the casket than delivering the eulogy. People have said that they'd rather talk about sex in very blatant terms than talk about how much they earn or how in debt they are or anything else.
And I will say that, though, it's very much cultural. There are cultural elements to that. I will say a big exception to discussions about money that has a massive regional variation goes as to rent amounts. Now, in New York City itself, actually, people openly, blatantly talk about rent amounts. They will ask you how much you pay. There's a specific cultural reason, and people will answer. And the reason for that is there is such a shortage of housing here that it becomes a highly competitive situation, and people want to know if they're paying fair price or not. And the only way to really circulate that information is through a sort of cultural agreement to be transparent about rent amounts. And it happens. But I have been told, now I've lived in New York City all of my adult life, basically. I don't know what people talked about, how much rent was or how much they were paying for their mortgage when I was growing up in the Midwest. But it's my understanding, if I were to go to Alabama or to Ann Arbor and just ask some random person how much they were paying in rent, they might think I was a little bit weird. They might be a little bit uncomfortable. Whereas I actually probably might not be. There have been strangers that I've told the rent to under the right circumstances here. at a networking group, like I would do that in a minute if someone asked.
New York is the land of real estate porn. So people talk about it. Real estate's a topic here. I mean, you will find conversations about, yes, absolutely absurd amount of money you will pay for a little box to live in. And we all talk about that. It's almost like a mark of, beside education and finding out, it's almost like a mark of either I've been really lucky to score this rent control department, or I know I sound like an idiot paying $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000 a month for this little box, but aren't I cool that I can afford that?
Yeah.
Afford it.
Oh, yeah.
Mark that, it's really interesting. And I think the conversation about real estate doesn't happen in a lot of places because who really cares? It's not a big deal in some of those. Well, Alabama, I have no idea what goes on in Alabama, but New Yorker here. But seriously, one would think that whole conversation about real estate doesn't go on with the same magnitude as it does in New York. It's like a conversation all the time.
Now, is it still a partially taboo to talk about salaries, to openly discuss what you make when it comes to salary in the workplace? Because I heard that recently, and I'm in a slightly different field of employment. I don't really have many opportunities to talk amongst my fellow employees how much one is making, but I wonder, like, is that still a thing?
I think it's circumstantial. For instance, I know exactly how much Bodenheimer makes.
I know how much he makes.
He knows how much I make. He's in the military. He's married. He has a child. He knows. I know what his rank is. He knows what my rank is. He knows that I am single. So no.
And now we all know.
You can Google ours. Yeah.
But I think it's circumstantial, and I think to add to that, beyond salary or your original question, are there topics that are always going to be uncomfortable or bring a level of discomfort? Yes. I think it's all circumstantial. It's all based off of what's attached to that, right? In America specifically, race is a discomfort thing because of what's attached to race. People don't want to talk about it. People don't want to talk about it because there's a stain on it, right? It's a scar that's part of American culture and legacy. There's also things that are attached to that nobody wants to talk about when it comes to unequal opportunities, when it comes to talking about white privilege, when it comes to talking about certain things. You hear in the news now, there are education systems now that are saying, hey, you can't talk about white privilege. You can't teach certain cultural things because there's a level of discomfort. We don't want our kids knowing about these kinds of things. That's kind of part of the reason why these certain things or certain topics remain uncomfortable, because nobody wants to talk about them because of whatever is attached to them. And so they kind of keep the negativity and keep it abnormal. They keep that abnormality of it alive instead of normalizing it, talking about it, talking about it normal. And so when it is brought up, because it's not mentioned enough, it's uncomfortable. Go ahead, Scott.
I have some ambivalence about what you're saying, though, and I don't know that I completely agree with it. And this is why. For a long time, and this is not a political show, so I'm just going to talk about what some people say. Some people. For a long time, I engaged in debates with people about whether it was better back in the old days when people could just sort of express what they felt about race in particular, although I think this applies to other identity-related issues like sexual orientation or gender or class or some of these other transgender issues, right? But I'll just limit this to race for the purposes of this discussion. And some people felt one of the bad things about the change in discourse around race in our country in the United States is that people felt they couldn't be honest about race, and so racist feelings went underground. And many people would say, I would much rather know that you hated me up front than to think that you were nice and that you liked me and that you were not a racist person only to have you stab me in the back. I hear that all the time. Then some people feel that some leaders in this country decided to openly court white supremacists, openly support individuals and groups that supported policies that were indisputably racist, and use open language that baited certain ethnic groups. And I've sat back because I never really agreed with this idea that keeping these topics underground was such a bad thing. I have not heard anyone say that they've been overjoyed that finally they get to hear more racism out in the world, that they miss the days when there was less abusive language out in the world. And so part of why I'm disagreeing with you, Caleb, is that what happened was some people felt, I believe, that their beliefs transgressed social norms. And rather than go through the uncomfortable process of self-examination, they chose to say, or they chose to believe that it is just their suppression occurring and that the world is worse because they can't have these beliefs fully expressed anymore without consideration of the fact that they hurt people who heard them. And they poisoned the dialogue around the whole country that impacted minority groups. And so I'm going to push back respectfully, but firmly.
So I challenge partially what you said, Scott, in regard to if that's how else do you learn? How else do you personally learn how to self-express, and how else do you personally learn what you should and shouldn't say? And the only reason why I say that is because I think about my example, and that is, coming here to US, 12 years old, not speaking English, and literally learning how to speak at that particular age. I'm sure there are things that I said in schools that maybe should not have been said. But it was through those experiences that I was able to learn some of these other things. So I'm wondering, what is the threshold then? What is the ceiling between being able to fully express who you are and then also learning from what you're expressing?
Well, it's one thing to make one of these social transgressions and to say something that is hurtful to other people and say, "Oh, I didn't realize that that was hurtful," or "Oh, that's my ignorance," or "Let me re-examine this." Mm-hmm. But when we're talking about, Caleb, I don't know if you used the term exactly a minute ago, but like this book that was popular a couple of years ago, White Fragility, which really was about people being uncomfortable with confronting their own subconscious or even conscious biases and acknowledging it. It's a different story. I think that in my experience, and I could be wrong about this, the world is a lot more forgiving if you say, "Oh, I didn't realize, I was ignorant. I shouldn't have said that. I'm sorry. Let me reconsider how I'm thinking about the world. Let me be uncomfortable and reconsider," as opposed to staying in your comfort zone and saying, "Nope, even though what I said was based in ignorance, it was hurtful. As a person of conscience, I don't care what anyone else thinks." Two different situations.
Do you think everyone has the courage and humility to acknowledge that, though?
We have not. Now this I will stand behind. We as a culture have only partially been willing to hold people to account. I believe that one of the downsides of living in a democracy is that the popular voice is viewed as being equal to every other voice.
The voice.
And that groups have to be placated in order to get their votes, even if those groups are destroying the democracy itself, let alone other things like the economy or national security or the underlying social fabric. Because of that, the politicians, because of the political system we are married to, Politicians tend to pander to those groups in order to build the coalitions they need to in order to vote. And you never get votes by saying, voters, you're wrong, even though the voters, shockingly enough, are wrong. If, for instance, you don't like the conditions of your roads, well, then, voters, perhaps you shouldn't have voted against the last 10 tax increases that would have paid for the roads being paved. People don't like to say that sort of thing. And so that, to me, is a fundamental problem with democracy. People don't like to say, we could live a much better, more prosperous and economically stable and viable and socially viable and vibrant culture if you really thought and took the time to not engage in language that's hurtful and keep people down. But many politicians won't say that to the people that can't stand to hear that they ever make a mistake in this world. And we end up with problems.
I actually have a quote. If I tried to say it on my own, I would act like Tim Taylor and totally butcher it. But it's by Martin Luther King Jr. The ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort, but where he stands in times of challenge and controversy. And I think oftentimes with us, kind of to go off of what you're saying, Scott, not just from like a political standpoint or from like a racial standpoint, but anytime, not just we are wrong, but if someone else is wrong and we know it, we have a sense of discomfort in correcting somebody on stuff, whether it's status, power, you name it. And I'm actually interested to hear Caleb's take on this, because I know in the military we see it with rank. We get uncomfortable trying to tell somebody something with rank. But why do you think that is? That even if we know we are 100% correct on something, we have a sense of discomfort in trying to correct somebody?
Rena, by the way, welcome to the party, and be sure to contribute. We want to hear what you have to say about all this.
I would answer that in this way, in asking yourself, or asking why is there fear in confronting that? Mm-hmm. The answer to that is because the response, or those who are in a position, when we see that somebody has done something wrong, say like a colonel, I noticed the colonel has done something wrong. Me, myself, I'm going to say something tactfully, but everybody else is not going to say anything because they've learned from the people who came before them that you don't correct colonels. You don't correct people in positions of power or influence. Is it uncomfortable for me? No, but that's who I am. It's an individual thing, I think. It's not uncomfortable.
It's a mindset.
I will say that the discomfort is placated with culture. I think it's the culture that allows, just like I was saying before, that allows that discomfort to stay alive. When you respond with, "Oh my gosh," or "Oh, that's not table talk," or that's not proper, proper speech, or "No, this isn't PC," or "That's not kosher," or whatever, you're allowing that to continue to be uncomfortable because of the response. It's never normalized. And to I see what you were saying, Scott. There's always going to be, I guess, a discomfort in the way people think and how they feel about certain things and the way they express those feelings. But I'm the kind of person that I would rather see the snake before it bit me than take a step and it bites me and I didn't see it. That's just the kind of person that I am. I feel like a lot of this, I don't know, this fog of being afraid to confront something that I don't know, poisoned culture forever. It's a fear that I can't understand, because I think that we have the power to get rid of that fear. But you have to jump into the darkness. You have to be brave. You have to find some comfort in being uncomfortable. Just like Oleg was saying, is how else are you going to gain knowledge? After the fact, though, once you gain that knowledge and you continue to do evil or wrong or whatever, you're making that conscious decision. And then judgment is passed, right? You are accountable to that decision that you are meaning to cause discord. You are meaning to be hurtful. Well, that says a lot about a person's character.
But I will say this, and I don't want us to go, well, unless we want to go back and forth. But I will say this about seeing the snake in front of me. I demand that when you're in my presence, you treat me with respect. I don't care what you feel inside. You don't use the F word with me. You don't use any other sort of derogatory language about my racial background or any other characteristic I have. I don't need to see the snake in you. When you stand in my presence, you bring your best. That's what I expect, and that's what I get. And the minute we say we tolerate people treating us and using us a certain way just because we want to know what they feel inside, we allow that to happen again and again and again. I say to that, no, never. Not when you're talking to Scott Mason.
I wasn't saying.
You got wanted some passion tonight. You got
I can't fire up
tonight. Okay, I wasn't saying disrespect me, and I was not saying that I tolerate that. Right? You were going to step to me with respect. You were going to get bit, because as much as you can be a snake, so can Caleb. Right? You bite back. You will respect me. I will not tolerate it. However. Show me your true colors. Tell me who you are, because I would rather invest my time in somebody who is authentic and genuine than to pour my time and energy and money, if whatever, into somebody that is just going to use me or betray me or stab me in my back. That's just who I am. And then if you are disrespecting me to my face, well, I'm done with you. Period. That's it. I'm done. I will bite you. You will deal with my poison, and then I'm going to move on, and I'm just going to be done with you. But I do not tolerate disrespect, and I do expect respect.
So let me ask you one thing. Am I an echo? No, I'm okay. So Scott, and Caleb, I mean, I completely agree with you. Of people affording us respect and using verbiage and terminology that does not cause us to rear up. But what if? Because Scott knows I'm pretty outspoken. The disrespect, the verbiage, the messaging that is being set forth in whatever forum, a one-to-one conversation or in a meeting, etc., isn't necessarily addressing you, but it's addressing another group of people, someone in the room, etc., etc. You know, most of the time will open my mouth. I did it on Sunday at a birthday brunch. To the chagrin of a couple of people around me, but somebody at the table was just, I thought, just saying these things. And I sort of said, first world white privilege. And she like, you need to get off this topic. And but so many people, if it's addressed to them, if the discomfort is personal, because it's talking at or about them, they will react, but they won't if it's about others. And
really good point.
We're trying not to perpetuate, we're trying to stop the poison, stop the ugliness, even in little tiny steps, little actions. It's so much ugliness out there. My big mouth is not going to change it, really. But I can't sit well with myself if I hear something going on and it may not be about me. And people have even said that to me. Well, we're not talking about you. You're not that. Very well. What the fuck? I'm sorry. It just can't be spoken, So.
First of all, I do want to acknowledge Rena's comments. Thank you so much for that. Keep them coming. We love hearing from you. And Bodie, do you have something you want to say about this?
I'm enjoying. I like leather jacket Scott on here. He's more fired up than suspended Scott.
I want to add something quickly. While Adrian threw out the F word, I think it's a perfect transition and perfect transition to what I wanted to say. So, I did a TED talk about 4 years ago by now, and I started the TED talk with the F word. And what's been really interesting was I would send out these emails, or have been sending out these emails to different schools and colleges to get hired as a speaker. And the feedback that I would receive oftentimes, for example, there have been times when I would receive feedback in an email from, let's say, a middle school that I'm reaching out to, or a high school. And the very first thing that I'll hear is, "We don't curse at our school." So it completely eliminates me as even a possibility to have a conversation with them about a possible presentation. And it was interesting for me, or it has been interesting for me, to learn the role profanity has in today's world. In some conversations, like Scott and Caleb were mentioning in their brief back and forth, is the whole concept of treating people with respect, and personally speaking, I think, yes, maybe there is some context when certain things are quote unquote appropriate or not, but I also think that there's an element of just personality. If it's not directed at the person, if the F-bomb is not directed at the person, for example, but rather as a way to communicate the message, then I don't know what is the discomfort.
So
If it's not personally addressed to that individual, but rather to communicate an overarching message, that's the part I've been stuck on.
I'll have a lot of thoughts about that, but I wanted to briefly address something that Adrian said earlier. So Adrian and I actually were in a clubhouse room last week when something like this happened. Yes. So someone bombed the clubhouse room we were in and made some very lewd and inappropriate remarks to one of the people that was in the clubhouse room. And it was, the response was challenging. There is a way to get someone out of the clubhouse room. So what my instinct was quickly to go to that space and try and get rid of them, but I was fiddling around with it. But while that was happening, I wasn't saying anything. And so someone else who was there interceded and basically verbally took control of the situation. But because it's Clubhouse, which is audio only, this person who was the recipient of this abusive language was sort of left on her own. And I was, for all visible purposes, I was not saying anything. And then the person who took over and addressed the situation, I mean, he handled it like the pro that he is. I will say he's masterful at this. But one of the things that happens in the situations that exemplifies is, like, you don't know, there may be a zillion things going on that may keep people from being able to respond. Some of it may be fear and discomfort. Some of it may be what I was doing, which was trying to get the person off of there. It may be different things, like where they're trying to figure out, did I just hear what I thought I heard? Am I interpreting this right? And then there's, of course, social cohesion that wants to go on, and not violating social norms or not creating more of a ripple than that action did. Which goes as to your point, Oleg. Curse words violate social norms and thus create discomfort. However, I've always felt that is a purely artificial, and going back to Caleb's original point in this conversation, purposeless violation of social norms, because these words don't mean anything except what we give them.
Yeah.
And they're actually words that are not even haven't ascribed themselves with certain historical things that are bad, like the S word. It's just another word for something everyone does. There's not even anything obscene about it. Or the F word. It's about something that, let's hope, people are doing. And so, and my mother was this way, bless her heart. She's passed on. Oh, don't use that word. That offends me. Why? It's just 4 letters. You're creating the offense yourself. Chill out.
It's the most diverse word out there because you can attach it to it is effing fantastic. Oh my
Mm.
God, it's just like the most, and or you could say, you're effed up. Okay, get out of my sight. It's all attuned and attached to your tone and usage. It's a very descriptive word. People, yes, it's what people ascribe to it. You're exactly right. And it's, in my house when my children were little, they were allowed to curse.
I
they
wish I'd grown up with
they
your
were
house.
not allowed
Yeah,
to
no
say
kidding.
anything that was sexist, racist, homophobic, or any word like that. But if they wanted to say the F word, they could. But what I trained them really, really young, because I didn't want them to lose friends, if they were playing in someone else's house, they had to be very careful. And I explained that Mr. and Mrs. So and so, Johnny's parents, may not have the same thoughts that I have. And you were asked to leave and not come back. And it took a few, they never did it, but I saw them mulling that over, because I told them that word does not cause pain. That racist word causes pain. The sexist
Mm.
word causes pain. And that they got. They were, from a really young age, they were able to get that. But yes, I know I shot, me, Scott, on those calls, I like people, I can watch their face. It's like, oh
I
my.
love it. It always makes my day just a little bit better.
I'm gonna imagine them trying to say, "I want to play the effing Nintendo" at a friend's house, and how that goes over.
And they never did. They didn't lose
That's
friends with
good. That's
me.
good parenting. That's good parenting right
There
there.
you go.
Well, but Adrian, like if you were giving a speech in the South, and both trip,
It's a
correct me
different beast.
if this is a stereotype coming in. Is that a word that you would use during a speech? Like, let's say you were leading a networking group in Mobile, Alabama, or Arkansas.
I can't answer that like I definitively won't because it's such a part of my vocabulary. But I might try to be more conscious of it. And if I'm doing a speech in general, unless I'm in front of a rowdy New York crowd, I'm careful about the verbiage I use because I'm not stupid. I want to fit in to a certain degree. But let me ask you a question, Scott, because I'm seeing what you're wearing, etc. So, some years ago, I was going to give a speech down in some really small town for a fairly large company, even if it was in a big city, but in a small town down south. And I was goofing around with someone who is, I said, well, what should I wear? I like, what do you wear? Should I wear like a Peter Pan collar? Like, what do I wear? And I had all these stupid stereotypes. And they said to me, they know you're from New York, right? I went, yeah. They're paying you New York fees? I went, yeah. I said, then go the way you go, girl. Okay. And if it's the leather jacket or the black, because it's New York, it's like this is colorful to me because it's dark gray, as opposed to just black. And you know what? I said, yeah, that's right. That's absolutely right. Why am I have to go out and buy clothes and I still I don't do that. Some people would say, no, you really should dress to make the audience feel comfortable that you're one of them versus be you, just be you, which is the path I go down because I'm more comfortable on that path. I especially for speaking, I have to feel comfortable when I'm standing in front of an audience, and if I need to be authentically Adrian.
My brand strategist has told me to move away from the suspenders and tie look, actually, because he's like, you're obviously more comfortable in your motor jackets and your t-shirts and stuff like that. And when you're up speaking, including some speaking engagements I have coming up, he was very clear. Do exactly what you said. Wear those moto jackets. Wear your boots. Wear whatever you need to. You're going to really be you, and people won't care.
Yeah. Yep.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I'll share a story about that. When I landed from Ghana, I wore a shirt that was given to me for my birthday. It's actually in my closet. I'll show this to all of you later on. It is one of the most colorful shirts I've come across in my life. And I'll tell you this, that when I landed in I landed in JFK, and for some reason I had to go from JFK to Atlanta to Philadelphia, 3 airports, and walking through the airports in this shirt, I felt perfectly comfortable. That was me. Like I didn't, but I'll tell I'll tell you the looks that I received, the number of times I was asked whether or not I was heading to Hawaii or if I was coming back from Hawaii. But it was it was really an interesting like social experiment to be able to do that, and continue to remind myself, like, why am I feeling the discomfort of people looking at me in a different way? Maybe some people wanted to do that, but for one reason or another, whether it was courage or what you just mentioned, Scott, not feeling like it's socially acceptable to wear shirts like that, unless it's a certain occasion. I gifted 2 shirts to 2 of my friends, and I remember one of them immediately said to me, "I have no idea where I would wear this," and I just said, "Why? Why can't you wear it to work tomorrow?" Said it's way too colorful, way too much is going on. But it's really interesting because you go to another part of the world, you go to Ghana, and once a week you will see pretty much everyone wearing something like that. So it's just fascinating, kind of going back to Caleb's point earlier, and it's just all a matter of perspective.
I will wear. I'm wearing a pair right now. I wear the most obnoxious shorts known to man. I'm wearing a pair of Tetris shorts right now, and I will wear them out. My daughter is so uncomfortable when we go out. When I go to the gym, I rock it's a brand called Chalkline. This is not a shout out to them, but I wear those all over the place. But if they are listening, they could send me some pairs. But I wear their stuff all the time out and about, and it's so colorful. It is so obnoxious. I told my wife the other day, I was like, I'm really tired of when you go to the gym, like I get uncomfortable when somebody talks to me in the gym. Caleb can probably, although he probably likes it, but I get uncomfortable with that. And she's like, you're asking for it with what you wear when you're in there. But you know what? Like, I'm going to be me. I'm going to be my authentic me. I don't care how old I am. I'm going to dress how I want to dress and be comfortable with it.
Have any of you ever been told to tone it down?
Of course I have.
You're talking to the choir right now.
I bet all of us have. Have you, Oleg?
I like what everybody is saying, and the key word there is authentic self. Oleg, you wore the loud shirt because you felt that was Oleg, right?
It still is.
I don't need to wear loud colors to be loud. I'm just loud. But then again, I'm my authentic self. I wear what I want to wear. I don't care. I think at a certain age, you just don't care. I'll be 35 in like 2 weeks, and I just don't care. That's it. Yeah, I know. That's it, right? But Adrian was saying, I want to wear what I feel comfortable in. I need to be comfortable doing what I need to do. My purpose is to deliver whatever it is that I'm delivering to my audience. It's not about, my purpose is not, are they going to think something else about me because I'm wearing this or whatever. It's about my delivery. Are they taking in this delivery? Now, you do maybe need to take into account, is what I'm wearing distracting from what I'm trying to deliver, right? Mm-hmm. So there are certain things that maybe, if I can wear this and I can say this isn't distracting, but yet I'm still comfortable in it, it's still me.
Or
I'm
offensive.
not trying to put on a mask to play into somebody else's expectations to make them more comfortable, because then I'm allowing you to put me on the other end, right? I'm allowing you to put me into a level of discomfort because you're uncomfortable with it, but I'm comfortable. So why am I playing into that? My purpose is to deliver this to you. If I'm distracting, okay, let me know. But if you're not distracted by what I'm wearing and I'm comfortable and you're still taking value for what I'm trying to deliver, well, then it's all good. Kumbaya.
It's an interesting conversation hearing all of you men talk about this, because women hear different things. Okay,
Yeah.
women hear different
Mhm.
things.
Mhm.
She asked for it. She asked for it the way she was dressed. Okay. You better why don't you button that shirt button up a little higher, because you know the signal you're giving off. You think you really want to wear those jeans? Really that tight? You know what you're asking for? You know what people think, that's what you're communicating. It's a whole different conversation. It's an interesting conversation for your show, actually, because we as females grow up with it. And I will tell you something, I don't think it's off color. No, it's definitely not off color. I grew up in the city. I was a tiny child and I was on the subway, riding the subway with my parents. And when I say tiny child, I mean when my little legs did not point down on the seat, go over the seat, and like they might have dangled. They were just standing out. And I remember this like it was yesterday. I was probably 4, sitting there like a little girl, and my mother pushing my legs together,
Mm.
pushing my legs together. I had no clue what she was doing, so I guess it just was comfortable. I pushed, and she said, "You girls can't sit like that." 4 years old, and from then on, we're still hearing stuff like that, and it hasn't. We still talk about we talk more about what our female political, our vice president wears, what Hillary Clinton wore, etc. We have conversations about that. Okay, when's that going to change?
I mean, there's been whole articles on what the first lady is wearing and was it appropriate.
Totally. Oh, totally. Poor Michelle. She had the audacity to show her arms.
Well, and you think about the whole Justin Timberlake and Janet Jackson controversy, right?
Yeah.
He was the one that ripped the thing off.
How dare her?
Right, but she was the one totally that was blamed for this, and she never had a hit single again.
And he didn't apologize until decades later. He didn't apologize for a long time afterwards.
Yep.
He felt bad he felt bad for it afterward. But you brought up a good point. Man, gender, it's a huge difference. We can sit here, we're all men from different backgrounds and stuff, but we're men. We experience things in the way that we do as men. They don't, I guess people don't really look too much into what we're wearing for the most part. Women have been going through that forever.
With one exception that comes immediately to mind.
Yeah, hoodie.
What'd you say?
What comes to mind for men is wearing a hoodie.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that.
Oh my God.
Or dressing as a woman.
Clothing.
Or dressing as a woman.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. So, I mean, I know women who specifically wear certain types of clothes because they don't want to deal with, because we're still dealing with it, man. We're still dealing with some creep. If we're even at a business event, trust me, you're still dealing with some creep making some statement. So I know people who just purposely dress in something really baggy or particularly unattractive, and they're more comfortable because they don't have to deal with that. And they're not trying to get past that point or prove any point, because it's just not fun playing in that playground. So they leave the playground.
It's a tragedy, though. It really is.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it would be uncomfortable for a lot of people listening to this show right now and tuning in if they couldn't find ways to connect with everyone else on the show.
I
Does everyone
agree. We
agree?
have got to stop that discomfort immediately. Oleg, why don't we start with you? Where can people find you? Who are you anyway?
Yeah,
what do you have to do in this world?
Well, it's actually a great question that you ask, because I'm still figuring that out on many different levels. So I would say the primary place is through Overcoming Odds, and that's where people will be able to find more about my story and different things that I'm involved in, and podcasts, which every single one of the people on here has been a guest multiple times. And outside of that is LinkedIn, where it seems like a lot of people are engaging from and connecting with. So those two platforms are the ones that I'm most active on, and I know Adrian as well spends quite a bit of time on those, and I always enjoy the articles and everything you put out there because I could say this about each and every single one of you. You make me think, and you make me reflect, and you make me stay curious. And I always look forward to those opportunities to get curious about topics that either A, I didn't have much curiosity for, or B, I didn't even know existed, to be completely honest.
Caleb, tell us about yourself.
I yeah. So I once upon a time I had a podcast called The Ignite Podcast. It's still out there. You can still go and listen to my awesome 10 episodes of season 1. It's not dead. It's reinventing as I am as well. I am in a transformational period in my life, and I needed to take a step back, understand who Caleb is, and I'm still searching. But as I've talked with Oleg several times, I'm in the middle of rewriting my story. But you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm always up for a good conversation. It's really nice connecting with you, Adrian, Scott, Oleg, Trip. You know, I love you, all three of you, and always will from my heart. But yeah, come and hit me up. I'm always ready for a good conversation or even just a joke. I'm down.
Adrian Miller, I feel like I shouldn't even have to say who you are because, as I've said to you from the beginning, there's Cher, there's Madonna, there's Beyonce, there's Rihanna, there's Adrian.
Quite the club.
Yeah, there you go. LinkedIn, I think, would be the best place. I have really enjoyed, for very much the same reasons as Oleg stated, some of the things I've been reading on LinkedIn. I mean, Scott, you opened my mind to all sorts of things. The only thing, darn you, because it's like I read a little bit of it. I read your teaser, and then I've got to find time to actually listen. But LinkedIn is the best place. And like Caleb, I am totally up for reading things, connecting, sharing a joke, having a direct message, supporting whatever endeavors you're doing, and getting connected and starting a relationship, because that's what LinkedIn is really good at doing.
Mm-hmm.
Trip Bodenheimer, where can people find out more about you besides the fact that you wear flashy gym shorts? Come on, people are dying to know.
So yeah, theshadowspodcast.com. Shadows Podcast. We actually just dropped an episode right before we got on the air here. So I just dropped a new one today, my 70th episode. We're about to start our March Madness Rebound series coming up pretty soon. Just joined the Lima Charlie Network, so you all are familiar with most of those folks. And on the Shadows, every single person on this video call tonight has been a guest on the podcast. So you can hear their stories. But yeah, LinkedIn. I think I'm listed under like Edward Bodenheimer III. I go by my the Susan Bodenheimer name on LinkedIn, and then Facebook, Trip Bodenheimer. And same thing. I'm a recovering people pleaser that's not doing a very good job at it. And yeah, so hit me up. I love connecting with people, finding out more about people, and establishing those connections. Scott, you're next, right?
There are a lot of anniversaries happening here today.
Yeah.
All the number of episodes and all these conversations. Mr. Mason, where can people find you?
People can find me at the homepage for my podcast, Scott Mason's Purpose Highway, which is purposehighway.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn, smason1, or Facebook. If you are interested in dislodging all the toxic myths that have been holding you back so you can ignite the charisma within and then magnetize and monetize professional freedom, by all means, go look me up on Facebook or LinkedIn. There's always a link to schedule a complimentary one-on-one exploratory session with me, and we'll talk about changing your life. Purpose Highway drops a new episode every week. We have explosive guests and have a lot of changes on the way. So stick with us while we're there. We're about to go down a far more exciting road.
Mm. Scott, for everyone else, before we close, I just wanted to take a quick second and acknowledge the sponsor, the people that actually make this possible. It's an organization that I was actually introduced to through you, Mr. Mason, wasn't I?
Absolutely. CEO Patrick Bardsley has been a guest on this show as well as both of our podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
And do you want to talk a little bit more about what his organization does?
This is an organization that we were introduced to, speaking of anniversaries, 2 years ago, right?
Yep.
2 years ago. And I remember having a conversation with him, and this is a shirt, one of the shirts that I'm wearing right now. Buy it. And what struck a chord for me was the work that they do in employing people who are autistic, as well as, correct?
Yep.
Neurodiversity.
Neurodiversity. Okay, so people who are neurodiverse. Is that a comfortable term to get with?
It's the term that they use.
Okay. So what struck a chord for me was the work that they do and also who he is as a person. And I've connected with Patrick numerous times by now, and I just felt that it was the right connection and partnership to make. And I know, Scott, you felt the same exact way when all three of us were able to have that conversation with. And so I'm really grateful that we're able to be aligned with them. I'm grateful that they've been able to support us through all these years. And I just look forward to what else the future holds when it comes to that relationship with them.
Thank you all, everyone. You're going to learn a little bit more about that company right now, but hasta luego. It's been great hanging out with y'all.
No way! Look at those shirts.